Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our 2 newly released books, Football, a Love Story, and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books. Welcome to NFL Game Plan. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bring you our Week 7 preview between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to be joined by our Football Game Plan analyst, Teron Davenport, Gene Clemens, and also Chris James. But first, let's start this video off by taking a look at my keys to victory. Starting with the Vikings in this ball game, I think they have to start to smooth out their offense. Even though they won last week versus Kansas City, they still look inconsistent throughout the course of that ball game. Yes, they had some success, but not what you want to see from a football team that's going into Week 7. They have to find that level of consistency in their game, and it starts by smoothing out and being able to string long drives together consistently. And defensively, I think they have to stay disciplined in their coverage versus a guy like Matt Stafford that can buy time within the pocket and has a strong enough arm to outthrow coverage, so you can't get caught looking in the backfield. You have to stay disciplined in your drops and your zones if you want to have a chance. And Xavier Rhodes mirroring Calvin Johnson, I think, will be key. He's a big enough guy to match up physically versus Johnson. Can he win that battle throughout the course of the ball game? It's something that you want to keep an eye on. Moving on to Detroit in this ball game, I think we have to stop thinking that they're going to consistently run the football and be effective at doing so. So I think they have to find ways to supplement the running game, and they have 2 good options, I believe, at wide receiver to do that with the short passing game. You look at Golden Tate and Theo Riddick. Even involving a guy like Amir Abdullah in the passing game, I think could help supplement the running game and allow Calvin Johnson the freedom to run deep down the field. And defensively, it's simple. 11 guys to the football. You want to make this game a one-dimensional game from a Minnesota standpoint, so you have to stop Adrian Peterson. That's going to take all 11 guys on defense. Team defense helps you win ball games. And also, you have to stay aware of Harrison Smith. I love the way the Vikings are utilizing him in a running game and also in the passing game. They move him constantly around the defense, so you have to identify and stay alert of where he is pre and post snap, because he's a difference maker on that side of the ball. This week versus the Detroit Lions, I think once the Vikings get inside the blue zone, which is from the 30-yard line going in, I think they can get creative with their personnel and generate a big play in the passing game. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. And the reason why I drew this up this way, it's a cluster set, but I like Cordero Patterson despite him not getting a lot of action. I think he's a dangerous playmaker, and that's why I would put him in this formation. Also, Stephon Diggs, and you have your 2 tight ends, Michael Pruitt and Kyle Rudolph on the outside tight set. So from the defensive perspective, you have 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers. And the reason why you want to have this type of formation is because in their minds, 1, 2, 3, this is still a run formation for them, because you still have AP in the backfield and you're in a pistol formation, 3 yards, splitting the tailback and the center. So this is still a run formation for the defense from the defensive perspective, so they have to honor this as a run. But what you're trying to do is create opportunities deep down the field with these speed wide receivers, and also help yourself out underneath with guys like Kyle Rudolph and Michael Pruitt, your tight end. So let's say if this was a run play, you're going to have these guys work up and get the backers, right? So now when it's a passing play, all you're doing is having these guys run high-low crossers. So that's your built-in hot read and safety valve for Teddy Bridgewater. And what you're doing with these receivers, you're running them outside on the rail, trying to get that speed on those safeties and put those safeties in the bind. But you still are well protected underneath with your 2 tight ends going, in opposite directions on crossers. You could dump the football off and feel comfortable in those guys being able to make one miss. So a short play action here, turning your back to the defense, influencing these guys to come up and honor the run. And you set up right here in the pocket and you just read the coverage. Do you have the opportunity to go deep down the field to Cordero Patterson or Stephon Diggs? If not, then you have your options with 1 or 2 tight ends crossing in opposite directions. You can dump the football off, and if you even want to be creative, you can sit Adrian Peterson right there in front of the backer, thus creating a bigger passing window for this high crosser with Kyle Rudolph. So this is one way, I believe, inside the 30-yard line, the blue zone, I like to call it, where the Vikings can have some success with their personnel and taking advantage of a Lions defense. Opening up the Lions playbook from last week, you saw a great deal of offensive line communication versus the different blitzes and stunts they saw from Chicago, and facing an aggressive defense like Minnesota is going to be important for this offensive line to communicate like this once again. A great job in picking up the blitz allowed Stafford to find the open guy deep down the field. It's not that hard. If you keep him well protected in the pocket, he has the arm to outthrow coverage. You're going to see a great deal right here of how you're supposed to communicate as an offensive line. The unit was able to identify, play the piano very well, which means passing guys off to the next man, and they were able to effectively pick up this stunt from Chicago, which ended up being a touchdown.
Vikings at Lions is an interesting game. My X factor for the Vikings is the rookie receiver out of Maryland, Stefon Diggs. He burst onto the scene last week with over 130 yards receiving, averaging over 16 yards per catch. I think that he could be the vertical guy that they were seeking when they tried to bring aboard Mike Wallace. I think that the Lions are going to stack the box and dare the Vikings to throw the football. I mean, that's usually the game plan when you're going against a team like the Vikings that has a running back like Adrian Peterson. So my X factor is going to be Stefon Diggs taking advantage of one-on-one coverage. As far as the Lions are concerned, man, this is a team that just refuses to run the football. 60 yards averaging, running the ball per game is not good enough. That's not going to cut it. But if you're a team that throws the ball the way that they do, X factor is going to have to be your number one playmaker, and that's Calvin Johnson. They're going to really have to be able to have him come down with those alley-oops that Matt Stafford throws up there, and if they have a chance, he's going to have an outstanding game. So my X factor for the Lions is Calvin Johnson. I think the Vikings are going to win this game, and I have them winning this game 21-17.
The Minnesota Vikings are going to be traveling to their division rivals, the Detroit Lions, and Detroit pulled off an exciting overtime victory against the Chicago Bears last week. Now, as far as the Vikings, the start is Adrian Peterson. Even though he didn't have a great week last week, the production as far as the carries are there, and he can break one at any point. I think he had 25 or 26 carries last week. As far as a sit, it's going to be Kyle Rudolph. Against this Lions team, even without Levy, I think that they're going to focus more on a tight end, and you can get over the top with the explosiveness of a Stefon Diggs or even some of the other receivers that they have in their core. Now, as far as a start for the Detroit Lions, it's Calvin Johnson every week. There's no one who can literally guard him. His issue has been Matt Stafford being inaccurate. Stafford gained accuracy last week. Let's see if that continues against this Vikings D. As far as a sit, it's Amir Abdullah. Very stout up front the Vikings are against the run, and Abdullah will not find many holes, prompting them to pass the ball more often. A sleeper here is Stefon Diggs. If you can pick him up in leagues, he's been getting a lot of targets recently, and I think that will continue. Final score here is a high-scoring one. Vikings 31, Lions 28.
I like Detroit in this ball game. I think even without the ability to consistently run the football with some effectiveness, Detroit's passing game puts a lot of pressure on you as a defense because they're going to expand the field, force you to play a horizontal game, but still have the capability of going deep down the field. I think when you're Minnesota, that's going to weaken your pressure points and allow you to be exposed in one-on-one coverage. And I think Detroit has the options at receiver to make it happen this week. So I like the Lions to knock off Minnesota. And as we recap our picks, Gene is on a scouting assignment, so he sent in his pick. He went with Minnesota. Everyone is going with Minnesota. I'm the lone wolf this week. This is going to be a great game in the NFC North. And we also want to give a huge shout out to Viking fan forums and Lion fan forums for always showing football game plan support.